Fresh air.
Hi, I'm Maisie McCabe, UK editor of Campaign, and welcome to Campaign's Media360 podcast, produced by Fresh Air Production, and recorded here at the 21st Conference in the Grand Hotel, Brighton. This year's theme was risk and innovation, so for this series we spoke to a huge range of marketing leaders to explore how they and their teams push the boundaries for their brands and clients. In this episode, Fresh Air's Director of Content, Michaela Hallam, spoke to Alice Tendler, the Director of Marketing and Brand at OVO.
Thank you very much, Maisie, and welcome to another episode of the Campaign Media360 podcast. I'm joined today by Alice Tendler, who is Director of Marketing and Brand at OVO. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us.
Thank you for having me.
I'm starting every conversation by saying, you've got your job title is Director of Marketing and Brand, but tell me what that means on a day-to-day basis.
Sure. So I manage a team at OVO that's actually quite a broad spectrum. So advertising and media, so probably most akin to this session today and this conference. We also have an in-house studio. We have customer and consumer insights team within my team, sponsorship. So it's kind of quite a broad church, I guess.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And the theme this year at the conference is all about risk. A question that's helped us find out a little bit more about the individuals that I'm talking to over these couple of days is, what's the biggest risk that you've ever taken in life? Let's kind of remove the marketing piece for the moment.
So I'm not a massive risk taker. I'm very boring. My husband would probably say the biggest risk that I take on a day-to-day basis is my cavalier approach to crossing roads. I would say career-wise, though, probably making the change from creative agency side, crossing onto, in inverted commas, the dark side. Client side. Yes, exactly. Which at the time felt like a huge decision and felt like I was, in some ways, closing a door on that sort of chapter of my career. I actually now don't think that's necessarily true.
Yeah.
But I'd say at the time that probably felt like a risk and like a big move.
And probably gave you an insight, though, crossing from one side to the other about how you might manage relationships as well, I guess.
I really hope so. I definitely kind of apply an understanding of, I think, the kind of inner workings of the agencies and what's probably going on behind the scenes, I would hope, to the way I manage them. A lot of our team at OVO are actually also ex-agency, which I think is quite interesting. I think it teaches you a certain resilience and a willingness to not need to control everything, to kind of roll with the punches a bit because you're used to not necessarily having control. So, I do think it's really valuable and I have no regrets, but I think it can feel like a kind of big divide, and actually having made their crossing, I don't think that's necessarily true.
I think that's one of the themes of the panel that was earlier with Uber, actually, talking about the relationship with client and agency and about how that relationship, and a good relationship, means that you push each other, but you also together collectively take risks. How would you encourage a safe space to take risks within the work that you do and within the teams that you work with?
Yeah, I listened to that piece with Uber actually earlier, and I thought it was really interesting. She was talking about credit and kind of cashing in chips, and sometimes you can do it and sometimes you can take the risk and other times you can't. And I think what I often do is, on the occasions when I know we've perhaps taken the safe route and we haven't been able to take the risk, I'll phone up the agencies afterwards and say, I know that wasn't the risky decision. That might not have been what you wanted. Please keep going. It doesn't mean I don't want to see the risky ideas. It's just that we won't always take that path. So I think it's really important not to kind of close down and be kind of pigeonholed into, I'm a client that will only buy safe work, because I don't want to just see safe work. But sometimes that will be the right way to go.
So, yeah, context and circumstance have a huge part to play in that.
And judgment, yeah.
Yeah. What's the most... And again, it's the interpretation of the word innovative, because it means different things in different times and different contexts. But what is the work that you have coming up that is the most out there, that's kind of pushing the boundaries?
So I'm really proud of, I guess, a couple of pieces where I think we've sort of blurred the boundaries of kind of media and creative. So I think it's kind of spotting opportunities that are almost media-led, where perhaps kind of tech and innovation is kind of driving the idea and then the creative sort of brings it to life.
Yes.
So I think a couple of good examples of that from OVO World. So we did a campaign called Greener Times last year, which was promoting Power Move. So it's our product that essentially encourages people to use their energy at home when the grid is greener.
Yes.
So you're using fewer fossil fuels, better for the planet. But what we did is we actually developed a programmatic trading API with our media agency that means that the ad actually only appears when the grid is greener. So we're sort of walking the walk as well as talking the talk, and it's that sort of blurring of kind of media and message, which I think is really interesting. At the moment, we've got a campaign out that's quite similar. It's on Alexa, so kind of taking that same idea but into people's homes so they can use Alexa to tell them whether the grid is green. And again, it's sort of media first, but then we've kind of brought it to life, I think, in a really engaging way.
And that's we found a quote that said that was a consumer verbatim that was picked up by your insight team that said, I really value how you allow me to draw down green energy from the grid. And so that kind of real life data from your consumer and how you've enabled them to understand the context in which they're drawing down energy.
So that
really
quote
important.
just was really fascinating because, of course, you can't draw down green energy from the grid. That's just not how it works. You can't select particles that are green versus particles that aren't.
Not.
So it's kind of really, I think, filling that knowledge gap to help people understand that actually the biggest piece that they have control over is when they use their energy. So if you use it in peak times, that's when the grid will be consuming a lot of fossil fuels.
Yes.
If you put your washing machine on in the middle of the night, then that's much less likely. You're probably using those green particles, but unfortunately, you can't individually be selective over how that works. You just have to think carefully over timing.
Yes.
So we're really trying to help educate people on that.
You won a Campaign Media Award recently. Can you tell me a little bit more about what that work was about?
So that was the Greener Times campaign. So that was using programmatic trading to essentially show our Power Move ad at the times when the grid was greener. So a really nice kind of combination of promoting our product, but in a really interesting and kind of relevant way.
And what sort of response have you had from your consumers to that?
So really successful in terms of the number of people who are taking up Power Move. And that's what we want really, because we're sort of measuring success both in terms of brand metrics, kind of awareness and consideration, but also actually like units of carbon avoidance. So the more people that we can bring with us on that mission, the more difference we can make through our customer base.
You've used the voice of James Norton in that app on the Alexa skill. Well, how did you cast him? How does he kind of embody the brand and the message that you're trying to put out there?
So the idea is essentially that it's almost a bit of a spoof of a kind of mindfulness meditation or something. So kind of telling your appliances to kind of wind down and switch off when the grid is kind of not at its greenest. So I think in terms of casting, we chose his voice because it's very soothing and he kind of has that kind of sound, very kind of seductive, very kind of gentle. But also he does have sustainability credentials. It's something that he really cares about. So, he was able to talk to us about, his solar panels and his EV. And, he was actually very knowledgeable on the subject. So I think that authenticity was also really important.
I also think that his is a voice that is quite recognisable. So if you hear him, you don't necessarily always have to introduce who he is. Have you used that benefit across audio channels, more audio channels specifically?
So we haven't used James specifically. You're right. We did choose him because he's also recognisable and it was really great for us from a PR point of view. Yeah, exactly. I don't think we expected the amount of PR that we got necessarily. It was brilliant. Like people really connected with us and kind of really enjoyed his voice and the way that he kind of brought that script to life. Generally, we do a lot of radio actually, but not using James Norton. I think for us, it's more about finding a voice who brings to life the message and is right for that kind of creative.
We've talked about the innovative, particularly in the tech space, work that you've done. Are there any other brands or work that have inspired you recently?
So my LinkedIn this morning is full of Monzo. So they've just released the sort of ads that, in their words, didn't make the cut. But of course, they're actually the ads that are kind of incredibly risky and probably kind of push the boundary much further than they would in sort of paid channels. So yes. I think that's brilliant. And I imagine that will really connect with the type of audience that they're trying to talk to. So it's brave, but also I think kind of rooted in an understanding of what their customers and sort of prospective customers really enjoy about Monzo and their tone of voice as well.
Brilliant. Thank you very, very much. And with that, I think that wraps our conversation. Thank you so much for joining me, Alice Tendler, Director of Marketing and Brand at OVO. I think I might think it's time for a nap. I'm going to go and power down, but I really, really enjoyed that conversation. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you for listening to the Campaign Media360 podcast presented by Michaela Hallam, the Director of Content at Fresh Air Production, our podcast partner. There are lots more conversations to hear with a great range of marketing leaders, so please follow on your favoured platform so you don't miss an episode.